Hi, and good evening. Welcome to those of you who are new, and welcome back to the rest of you. Well, good noon to you, Steph, and noon is fine too. It is a weekend after all. And to see, I think that sounds fantastic. I'm not sure when I would be allowed to travel to the US next time because of the situation with the world, but I'm definitely interested in coming by. Like a mini tour of the area should be pretty good. And some of those people should probably have enough contacts in the area to also set something up in Portland and maybe something else in the area. So it's at least 2 or 3 days for the promoters of the venues to be able to make their investments back and such. Yeah, I'm up for it, and depending on what it could be in the future and when, we can exchange some contact informations in the future and discuss details more further. And business here has been good. A few days ago it was very rainy, but since yesterday it's been sunny, and today was very sunny. A lot of people. Fortunately, we have a lot of tables out. After the morning stream, I took a walk around the area and shot a video. And right now it's a bit too much people out since it's a weekend and all of that. But either in the morning or in the coming week, I will shoot another video where I'm walking in the other path that I didn't walk the last time. And I will edit those two together and show you more of this area. As to the question asked about any partner, no, not for the moment. I tend to be introverted and busy, and that is usually a bad combination for most other people. No, sorry about missing that question. I don't have any favorite Russian writer or artist. I don't really know anything or anyone from Russia. I'm sorry for my ignorance, but there's just something about Russia that it's pretty isolated from the rest of the world. For better or worse, I'm not sure. Just for various reasons over the years, they haven't really been taking many steps to be welcoming to the rest of the world. It seems like a difficult place to me. And when it comes to recording, yeah, I prefer to do things with real equipment and not plugins. I despise plugins. And I have. various things that I've collected over the years. And when I invest in recordings, I usually also borrow equipment from other people that either have access to or can afford or have collected other things that I don't have over the years. That's one of the benefits of knowing other musicians and people with studios and so on. Hi and welcome back, Paul. No, I've never boiled my guitar strings. I know that my bassist sometimes in the past has boiled his strings for his bass. But when it comes to strings, they're not that expensive. It's better that you just buy proper ones and find a brand that you like, and then you can usually find a good price for like a set. There's many manufacturers that sell them in sets of 3, 5, or 10. Hello. That was to one of my co-workers that left. Sorry, not to any of you here. Poor guy, he stayed an hour longer than he's supposed to. Guess it was a lot of things to clean up. Greetings to Germany as well. I'm not good at programming stuff either. Recommendations? You need to be a bit more specific, like when it comes to equipment or the actual instrument. For bass, it depends on the project. I have a Höfner bass that I use when I record myself. And then, of course, my bassist has classic Fender Jazzmaster. And I don't remember what bass Dea has. I can check in the future. Then other bass that I think is interesting is simply using an octave pedal on a piano. Sounds pretty deep and dark. I don't have a favorite Life Flower song. I honestly don't. Right now, just as a light start, because I got it a few days ago. Yeah, at that walk I took. Just a Guinness. And then I have a porter and a stout from a brewery not too far away from where I live. So I'm not sure if I should take the porter or stout afterwards. If anyone watching this has a preference, if you like porters or stouts, or if you think they're equally fantastic, let me know. When was the last time I were in Germany? Not sure. It's been a few years ago since I did concerts there. Maybe 3, 4 years ago. When I had a concert in Prague in Czech Republic. We had a driver coming to and from Berlin, but I wasn't really in Germany. I was just driving through it. And I understand that some people use plugins instead of hardware equipment. Things are expensive everywhere when it comes to music equipment, so it's all about priorities. And to me, I'd rather have something I'm comfortable with or borrow things from other people than have something that I don't feel 100% immersed and involved in. But that's just me. So if you're able to make something with less, all power to you. And I'm happy for you. Otherwise, I'm equally sad. And to stuff about making Q&A and story time videos, well, one of my main reasons why I started making videos is that I find it to be incredibly uninspiring to answer interviews with magazines that usually don't even cater or serve my fan base. In other words, answering questions by strangers for strangers. And even though that may attract some new fans, usually it doesn't. And it's usually the kind of people that don't really understand what I'm doing either. And they don't have a good picture of what I'm trying to accomplish, and so on. So instead of waiting for those people to ask me for interviews with their magazines, I felt it's better that I do this by myself. And since you are the crowd or the followers or fans or readers, listeners, whatever you want to call yourselves, since you are the ones that want to know things that I've experienced or performed or recorded or other things related to all of that, it's better that you're the ones asking me the follow-up questions than someone that is completely uninterested or unaware. I started doing all of that. And I have nothing about Austria. Like I know nothing of really. It's a country that's far enough away from me that I'm never there casually. And I was born not too far away from here, but then I was raised about an hour away from here. And I stayed there for about 15 years. And after that, I've been traveling and recording music for the past 20 years after that. My health is neither good or bad. I just am. Physically, I'm too well. Mentally, that's another story. How old I am? I'm 36. And I have a little sister. She's 2 years younger than me. And yeah, now I have this place to myself the last staff from the cafe left a few minutes ago now, so now I can enjoy your company and these beers I have lined up here. And welcome back, Yakub. Yeah, I'm fine. Hopefully you're doing fine too. Yeah. I know the guys of Harakiri. They're nice guys. I've performed with them in previous bands before that band too. Back when I toured with both Hypothermia and Life Lover. Well, it's not that the purpose of Life Lover was to strong ourselves. He said actually that we are, not that it's the purpose of it, but just that's a fact that came with it. Like it's a hazard of that kind of job or lifestyle, that when you live in a way where you just put unrealistic goals on yourself as an artist and as a human being, it becomes pretty dangerous after a while, and he suffered the ultimate consequences of that while I managed to survive. But overall, one of the main purposes of Life Lover from the beginning to the end was always to defiantly walk our own path and do whatever we want, regardless of any music styles or boundaries and any languages that we felt fit in, we used, and any music styles or instruments that we felt like using, as well as samples and different vocal styles. We used and implemented what we felt was interesting and necessary. Yes, black beer as in a stout. One of the best kinds of beer there is. Self-discipline. I think it's very important, and I've devoted a lot of my life to it, for better or worse. My worst self-destructive experience, and if I ever ended up in a hospital from it. I've ended up in hospitals, but that's not just from being self-destructive, but being like, I'm speaking Swedish for too many hours at work here, so my vocabulary is a bit shitty today. I'm sorry. I'm searching for a word, but I can't find it at the moment. It will probably show up after another beer or two, but I think worst is the wrong term to use, because they were useful in some ways, and in many aspects, in many situations where I self-imposed a very dangerous situation upon myself and hurt myself in a way that I knew would be terrible for me. That was on purpose to serve a certain idea and to have a certain kind of experience. Like one of my versions of self-discipline about a decade ago was when I had borrowed someone a lot of money. I did that amount of cuts on my body to teach myself to be more careful about lending other people money. And since then, I have been very careful about that, because the following days was very, very painful. And then there is another time that there is photographs of, and there is videos, but those videos are seized by some different people and hidden, and I don't really mind or care about that. And that's the live show I did with Shining for one of their concerts with Mayhem in Oslo in Norway, where I, after that, ended up sitting for 7 hours on a bus with open wounds covering seats on those buses, and then trains for 2 hours with my blood. So I was forced to go to a hospital, and then because I had too little blood left in my system, so I couldn't remove my clothes to show my wounds, so they didn't let me go through the emergency room line, so I had to stand in line for another hour at the emergency room because I couldn't prove that it was an emergency. And then I fainted on the floor, and then I woke up maybe an hour or two later in a hospital bed, and they were angry at me for not going there earlier, which is ironic, but that's what it is. And if I would make something like the music from 2004 or 5, I have some material like that, but because I have different equipment, it simply sounds different. And I haven't done stick and poke by myself, but both of my tattoos on my feet are stick and poke, done by one of my friends or ex-friends, depending on how you. One of them are the 4 grains used for brewing, and one is a spore print, which symbolizes intoxication for the spirit and intoxication for the body. That's stick and poke by hand. And so is this. Coffee time sounds good. And Bellstat, about the subject of how I first met Jonas. Yeah, I think I've talked about it in some videos, but I'm going to make a video in the future where I'm going through like a lot of my experience with Life Lover and my friendship with Jonas and my side of all of it. So it's going to be shared again in like a long format, in-depth video. As for if I've been in a lot of fights, well, I'm usually relaxed, but yeah, I've been in some physical altercations and events, usually to protect other people. And thank you, Liebe. It's very appreciated. How many friends do I have? I'm not sure. Sometimes it's hard to know who to refer to as a friend and just someone you know. But there is a fair amount of people that I would trust enough to call my friends. Well, I'm good friends with the guys in Snail King. They're actually just like 30 minutes away from here. I've known them for like 20 years. And I don't work without shoes, but I don't know what you refer to as works. I have shoes when I work, but if you refer to as physically, sure, whatever you want to call it. But beyond that, I don't have much doom or sludge recommendations. The guys in Snail King has a very good doom sludge project called Piss Boiler, which is a lot better than it sounds. So if you like Snail King, you should check that out, but I would assume that you actually already know it. Obviously, Flash Press is pretty good. And yeah, my earlier works, I was more about trying to share a sense of frustration with humanity, and I was like, in my life I was a bit anxious and didn't have enough resources to properly research different things. I was focused on other things, so I didn't pay attention and make sure that wherever I was trying to manifest was properly translated. So that's why it's broken Latin, because yeah, I was 14 when I composed that stuff, and I was 17 when I recorded it. And the drummer on that recording was 12. So we were two young guys. And welcome back. Good to see more people from Canada. It's always nice. I'm not sure when I'll be able to do shows in the future, but and yeah, I'm the one that runs my band camps, though the hypothermia one is run by my guitarist in Belgium, Hans. So But when it comes to consider suicide, I run that stuff. But I'm going to update my web shop in the future. Not too distant future, so it's possible to add if you want a signed copy or not of whatever bands that I'm in. Because right now it's not possible to leave a message in an order. But I've found that it's actually possible to add some of those options in the shop. So I'm going to do that. Otherwise, I recommend that you meet me in person, because that feels like a more natural way to sign stuff. You can come here. It's easy to find this place. The address is on Google Maps. Tabergstoppen.se. I know I don't listen to shoegaze. I think for me, it's uninspiring, and I don't like that kind of sound design. Though I would like to make some music like that myself, but that's also one of the reasons why I wouldn't listen to it by other people, unless it's someone that I know, because I don't want to have others color my vision. And yeah, I'm going to restock the new Cal album, for example, in my shop, and there are some Life Lover items or releases that I don't have anymore that I want to offer those that follow my work, so that they can access all of it from one of its sources instead of going to other places. And then right now I have to focus on paychecks or bills, because I'm a few months behind on some things. But when I get back on track, and when I'm another paycheck in at this place, I'll be able to invest once again in making some new shirts and pins and patches and other stuff. I'll see what happens. But yeah, I definitely want to make some special things this year. And what my family thinks about Life Lover and other things. Well, my father has never understood it. He seems intrigued, support. She owns everything I released and actually listens to it when she paints. And she has been to many of my concerts. And she even let me organize a festival in her backyard for 8 years. So vart är där? Well, it's just outside. It's in Jönköping. It's where my workplace is, and where I am for about 90% of the time from now until September. As for my guitar, or my previous guitar, an artist in the US bought it, and I'm happy that he got it. And from what he told me, he seems like the right person to have it, because he's the first one in over 10 years that was interested in it and could actually put his wallet where his mouth was. And I felt that during the second era of hypothermia, that guitar fulfilled its purpose, and it started to get connected to some people, and other things that I didn't want to be connected to hypothermia anymore. So it felt like the right time to give it to someone else to continue its life. And as no one has said porter or stout, and I just finished a stout, I'm going to have a porter. Beautiful. And thank you. Glad to hear that there are some people appreciating the new era of ritualmord. I like it too. And welcome back, Elvia. I haven't been to desert areas of the US yet. I've just been to Seattle and Portland and like surrounding areas. Beyond a few airports, but I can't count those because those were just layovers. And as for performing any music on live streams, yeah, in the future, definitely. Today is not the right time because I don't have any good ideas for the moment. But yeah, I'll set something up and it will be clear in the description of that particular live stream if there's going to be music or not. And thank you very much, Ram. It's very appreciated. Cheers. And when it comes to horns emerging, yeah, I just need to clear up some aspects about the lineup because that just self-destructed in the really very beginning. And I have a band for it. I've recorded one album and composed two more, and they are ready to be recorded, but the record label that I have the free record contract signed with don't want to release instrumental albums, so I have to make arrangements with my other friends to do the vocals and the lyrics, and it's a lot of work that we just haven't had the time for because all of those other musicians and members of the band are busy with work, and usually I am too, but especially it's waiting for them a lot. Now, since I've waited so long to complete that project, I definitely want to rush it. It needs to take the time that it takes. And I think when it comes to what I think about nihilism and existentialism, I don't really have any perspective about existentialism. But there is something to learn from all philosophy. And yeah, walking around nature, It's definitely a way to have less of a beer belly, but also I'm blessed with good genetics. My grandfather was a heavy drinker, and he would have been 80 years old if he didn't die a few years ago from some bad luck. And thank you, Han. Cheers back to France. My experiences with labels are very mixed. I've had a fair share of both good and bad ones. I think that's a subject that deserves a separate video. And if I'm reading books at the moment, I mentioned that briefly in the morning, so it's worth mentioning again here, that the past years, like maybe 4 or 5 years, I haven't really had the mindset to read any books that are not educational. So that I've only read beers about foraging and brewing and things like that, and cooking, hands-on stuff, things that serves my passions. But when it comes to authors that influenced or inspired me as a lyricist, that's the problem, that I haven't really had much inspiration for that, because my main inspiration is always nature. And to a big extent, especially like all of my lyrics that I wrote for Cal, for example, is all based on experiences on psychedelia. In other words, mushrooms. So that's my influence. And cheers back to Mexico. And also, but she's forced to stay at home, unfortunately. And as for any philosophers I don't have any in particular. And I can't think of any philosophy that would be useless, because you can usually, one of the points of philosophy is to twist and turn things, at least from my perspective. So if something is worthless to you, either it's not for you, or you're reading into it wrong, or you're not reading between the lines enough, or you're not reading it at the right time of your life. Maybe you need a certain life experience or context to be able to have use of the information. As for what I think about and enjoy, nothing. I was shown by someone else maybe some minutes of something, and to me, like many other things, I don't find it to be interesting or worth my time, and it's not negative against anyone. I'm simply unmoved and uninterested. And that's not a personal thing, that's just me. And if you don't like that, you're going to the wrong place. And cheers back to Serbia. Sorry if some of you are experiencing like lagging in my stream. I get a message that my connection is not stable because, yeah, this is in the countryside, though it's in the city. But we have had problems here with the internet the past week. And it says that I'm connected. How do you guys watching this? Is the video showing properly for you? Is the sound going through? Because for me, it's hard to know. Because it would suck if I have to restart this, but yeah, I'm not sure. I've never had to before, so I'm not sure what to do. As for, like, I don't know anything about Slavic metal bands, unfortunately. It's an area of the world that I'm not very familiar with. I've had planned trips there in the past, but unfortunately I've been unable to go there. But hopefully I will be able to go when the restrictions are lessened or removed, I hope. As for something I would like to share that someone has not asked, there are a few things, but that's videos that I'm working on that will be uploaded on my channel. So don't worry about that. Let that be a pleasant surprise. Hopefully it will be pleasant at least. But it's coming when it's coming, as we all say. And beyond that, there's plenty of other videos in progress too. And beyond that, at least monthly or bi-weekly streams as well. So we'll find enough time to go through a lot of things and subjects. Okay, that's good to hear that it's working for most people. And it's weird that the notice here about the connection has disappeared several times, and now it's back again. While it, in the corner, yeah, it says that my connection is just full to my capacity. But yeah, it's like a kilometer to connect this place to fiber and or 5G, so they don't have, or 4G even, so they don't really have that. The only reason why they have Wi-Fi here at all is because you can book one of the rooms here for conferences. That's nice to hear, Haythin. It's appreciated. Well, the worst case scenario, I have to like restart the router and either make a second video, or I don't know if it's possible to pause or restart it. We'll see in the future what happens and how this evolves. And thanks, Han, or Sahana. And yeah, I've visited France and performed in France several times too. I've been around. I don't remember the first place I performed at. It was like in the countryside in the northern part. And then, of course, I've performed in Paris. Then I've been to Marseille and some of the islands around the area, like Friol. That's why I have a song about it. Then I've been to some of the countryside north of Marseille. Like, yeah, I will leave out some of those villages for personal reasons, because some of the people that I know from there or that I've stayed with there maybe don't want me to share that information, so I will keep that private. And no, I've never been committed to any institution. I've been to some. My first girlfriend tried to kill herself, so I visited her while she was at the institution. And then I've taken friends to institutions or picked people out or up from institutions to take them home and things like that. And once again, I would love to return to the Czech Republic. I look forward to going to Iceland because I have friends there and we have plans to record music and make some concerts. That will be interesting. And I would love to return to Canada. I always had great times there. And I always look forward to return to Mexico. But yeah, there's not really any country that I wouldn't want to go to, except Denmark. I hate Denmark. They have to pay me twice the amount of any other country for many reasons. But yeah, I would love to go to any country. Business, private, or both. As for most cathartic form of art, I have no idea. I don't call it art really, but it is an art form to me. But there's something special about working with loops to me. Like, there's a very satisfying feeling about locking into a groove and find something that sounds fantastic on repeat and that you can connect to other things. And it's like a painting unfolding in sound. It's a very magical feeling. And if it's possible for a person who is not depressed to play or do this BM, definitely. I think that's just a concept. Just like me as a vegan, I can cook a steak. Or my boss, who is not a vegan, can cook a vegan meal. Many people could probably paint, though not be actual artists or painters. If you learn the right chords, pretty much anyone can play piano or program drums and make some beats. There's many ways to do that. As for what song was the first song with Life Lover, it depends on perspective. But because the first 2 songs that we finished and sent to friends was Stockholm and Nackskott, if you don't count in the improvised 2 songs on the promo made the year before. But yeah, the first thing we recorded after the week after Jonas stayed with me in the north of Sweden to record Sköld and Rapladsvalsen was that we went back to his mother's apartment where he lived, and we recorded Nackskott and Stockholm. Why do I hate Denmark? They can't speak. Their language is disgusting. And anything that they spell is an inferior version of how we spell things in Sweden and Norway. So there's nothing good about that. As for their culinary traditions, I think it's all bullshit. I find no merits in it. And sure, they were able to isolate a very potent form of yeast for production of beer that has aided many breweries, which is nice, I guess. But there is plenty of other breweries around the world that has done the same thing which are to me far superior strains of yeast, like the Kveik yeast in Norway that is several hundred years old, and different Brettanomyces strains from different areas of Belgium, just as some examples. As for what I would seek in a person in order to be a partner, that's a bit too personal for me to talk about in an active chat and video like this. But if I find one, I will let you know. As for my opinion on SKP, I don't really have any opinion, because I don't know the other person that he's making it with. But for what I've seen or heard that Jon has shown me, I used to feel pride of what he's able to manifest. Hi, as to deserted or land, depending on what you want to be referred to as, Mr. or Mrs. Land, driving force. It's always something beyond me, and nature and the void. But, well, for this evening, good beer. But otherwise, nature or the divine. So, in other words, music. As for the Alltid Aldrig lyrics and music, if it's connected to something or symbolize something, yeah. I wrote that and composed it after a very powerful experience with one of my friends. So it's about friendship and the kind of adoration that you will have or can have for a friend. And a way to make that into something eternal. to be shared. Greetings once again to Russia. Good to see more people more of you. I'm not sure when there will be a tour because, as I mentioned before, and it's worth mentioning again, the two people that I've been in contact with there has been forced to postpone our plans there. And right now, I don't have a complete lineup for my bands. So it's in the future, I hope. But yeah. I don't read mangas, but as if I watch anime sometimes, but I haven't had the time the past year, except rewatching some of my favorites. And I mentioned that in the first stream, I think, so it's worth repeating here. If you are not used to the concept and format of anime, but love good music and good art and good stories, everyone, and I mean everyone, should watch the show Mushishi. It's really fantastic and surreal and beautiful and calming. It's many good things. And yeah, I agree. Johan is very talented. And you can hear that in his vocals and lyrics that he's making for Ritual Mode too. We have some great stuff coming. Just a few weeks ago, we finished the third EP at my place and had some special photo sessions too. I'm going to be mixing it and mastering it over the summer to release it by the end of the summer. To the agent in this chat, good to hear. It means a lot to know. As for if there'll be a restock on the old Robes tee, nah. That's an old print with an old lineup. Several of the members haven't been active in the band for between 5 and 10 years. But with another lineup about 3 years ago, and that lineup doesn't exist anymore either. So I have to take new pictures with a current lineup to make a proper edition of another ropes design, actually. As for meaning of song titles by Lifeflower, that depends. Some are very literal, and a lot of them are play on words. As for specific, the MS Salmonella, the lyric is about an experience that one of the members had on another cruise ship that had a similar name to that, with an infected wound on his arm and a hangover. And I think the boat was called Salmonella, but I'm not sure. But Salmonella is, of course, an infection or disease. So, as for news from Trist, I could have if I wasn't busy with work. We wrote back and forth a bit more than a year ago, but since I'm not a very social guy in my private life, and he's from time to time not the most extroverted guy either, we just take time with everything that we ever do. But that is what it is, and things that will become or be shared about anything connected to my friendship with him and my past with him, that's going to be future videos. And if we're still wearing masks here, especially during different hours of the day when there is more people out and about, like on buses or in stores, you need to wear them for entering different places. And then there are sometimes in the mornings and evenings when it's not required. So it depends a bit on the situation. And if I've ever played the Silent Hill games, no, I've watched other people play them, and I've also heard the soundtracks for the first two with a friend that liked that kind of atmosphere. But that's over 10 years ago, so I don't remember at all. As for what my long hair means, I've had short hair twice. Like the past 15 to 20 years, I've cut it twice, just shaved it off out of boredom. And I've thought about it the past 2 years. And yeah, we'll see what happens in the future. Because when it comes to genetics, everyone in my family has had a full head of hair until they are 60 to 70 years, and then things may happen. So that means that I have at least 30 more good years of hair that I can enjoy. So that means that I can also enjoy throwing it away. And I do happen to enjoy making like this amount of hair and cutting it off, though I usually use it. I put my hair up and use the hair from my underside, like if you would make an undercut, I have plenty of places from the past years where I've cut off parts of my hair to use as a brush when I paint. But yeah, you'll definitely see a either short-haired or shorter hair version of me in the future when I'm in the mood for it. But when it comes to any meaning, there's no meaning to it. It just is. And I have never been to Japan yet. I had planned to in the past, but for tours that were related to other Asian countries, but they were cancelled and postponed 3 times. So until they actually prove that they will go through with the plans, I'm not going to make the effort because they wasted so much of my time. And yeah, it's just frustrating. And I try to be a kind and pleasant person to interact with as much as possible, but there's a limit to everything. Yeah, as some say here, there are pictures of me with shorter hair. And no, I don't stand up to wipe. But I think that is more fun to have a discussion when I have a guest. Like I could talk with Johan about that when he comes here in maybe a month or two. We're waiting for him to get a notification on when he has his vacation in the summer. And then he will come here to do some streams with me, with us. And I don't have any favorite paintings by myself or anyone else. As for what is the most positive Life Flower song, I'm not sure. Actually, as mentioned earlier, the song Alltid Aldrig is very positive because it's about love and friendship. Total loneliness. Yeah, I've experienced it, but not for several years because I've had to travel and work for the things that I do. But I think trust yourself and believe in the things that drives you, and if there is nothing, find it. Yeah, Johan is fantastic. I'll see what he says about that. And I'm going to grab something else to drink. So I'll be right back. And Eric, no, I don't care if I insult my Danish fans because they are Danish. Um, and another point about if anyone would be insulted by being called inferior, well, prove me wrong. If someone would call me inferior, I wouldn't be insulted. I would put my best intentions into proving that person wrong and show that I am something better than that. I've had people from Denmark going to both Belgium and Gothenburg to see me before, but that's a while ago. But as I mentioned before, I honestly don't really care. That's whenever, like what I said before, when someone from Denmark has asked if I will come to perform there, sure, if you pay me, I will go. That's all. And greetings back to Mexico. And if I've done urban exploration or dumpster diving, I always had a interest in like abandoned places. So I've been to some like industrial areas and old houses and hospitals and things like that over the years. And one of the times that I was in Paris, one of my friends lived at a squat, and I've joined them on a few dumpster dives about 13 years ago. Yeah, it was interesting. It's interesting to see what is available in the world if you look for it. And that can be applied to almost anything. As for what is the most unexpected fan I've ever met, well, sometimes on some concerts there has been people older than my mother who has been there by chance, and then they've decided to stay, and then they have approached me after and been like happily surprised that they found an artist that they would never have found otherwise, but that they actually appreciate my work. And I think that is very interesting. And if I've had paranormal experiences, that's a matter of perspective, but maybe. And one of my friends have actually asked me to make a video about related subjects. So that's actually going to be covered in the Q&A that I'm recording and uploading on Monday. So to be continued. I've only performed in Finland once so far at the Turku Satanale Fest. And one of the evenings was with Cal and some other bands. And then the other evening was with Hypothermia, which was supported by Ondskapt. And then we were followed by Magua, and then they performed a concert with Mikko's other band. I don't remember for the moment what it's called. Something with C. And if people recognize me in public, in some towns or in some countries, like it's more common, like if I'm in Belgium or sometimes Stockholm or Gothenburg, but also in Mexico, it happens. But just traveling or walking around, it doesn't happen a lot. As for how many years since I quit smoking, I don't really know. I don't count. Sometimes, like, I've had times where I smoke for maybe 2-3 weeks when I'm around other people that smoke. That's usually connected to other things beyond tobacco. But otherwise, like, I smoked actively between the age of like 14 and think it was around 24 or something like that, 23, 24. Doesn't really matter. But to me, that's expense that I rather put into things like a tasty beer or two instead of a pack of smokes. So it's easy for me to not smoke because I prefer to drink, and I hate to not drink. That's like my main vice, if you want to call it that. And who do I think is my main audience? I honestly have no idea. Self-educated and self-critical people. And as for if Jonas played in Ondskapt, he rehearsed with them, but he never performed live with them, and he was never performing on a record with them. He and I made the design and layout of their third album. And we have, of course, been doing a lot of things with them over the years, but not actively. He wanted to focus on Life Lover, and the same thing happened after a few years with their other project. And no, I don't have experience with tabletop role-playing games, really. I mentioned it a bit better than this in the morning coffee stream that I did earlier today. So I apologize if I seem a bit short about some of the answers, because there's a limit to how many things that I want to repeat. And I also want to keep the conversation going. And cheers, Juan. And yeah, Eric, I understand what you mean about the Danish man. If I interact with Danish people, I speak English. And I think you understand why. A word or two about life level or hypothermia. That's very complicated because that is a limit, and I'm not good with limitations unless they come to me naturally, like in terms of minimalism. Love and the devotion would be more choices. If I'm interested in philosophy, yeah, I like the term and the aspect or the lifestyle of philosophy. But I don't have any personal favorite philosophers. I think one of the main things about philosophy is to find it in life as you study it and experience it, and become a better and stronger person as you do it. And then either remove what doesn't work and continue and share what works. If I made studies, just personal ones, most things I know is things that I've learned by myself over the years. But beyond the 9th grade, I don't have any other formal education. It's just not for me. And that's nice to hear about Sartre. I think you should enjoy it. It's a good read for the summer if you are able to go to a park or a forest. I would recommend combining it with a bottle of wine, but coffee is good too. As if, or what my plans are for the future, I have plenty of them, and they all involve making more music and art and videos. Well, I think fearing a string breaking is never a good line to start from. You just assume that it won't, or you're doing something wrong. Otherwise, like my first years of composing music and recording music was with 5 strings. So if you fear the high E string, just don't use it. I've intentionally not put that on for many of my records and recordings because it's hard to implement in songs, and sometimes it just sounds bad, so it's easier to just remove it and not replace it. And my thought about Swedish schools is I have bad experiences, unfortunately, so I can't say anything good about it. So none really. I avoided going to it as much as possible when I grew up, and I then, as soon as I became old enough to not have to return, I didn't. And yeah, I've read Sioran, and I think it's just shallow and yeah, too much whining. It's not realistic. It's just a very clear image of someone not having someone to contradict him, and that he is somehow allowed to publish any of his ramblings or musings. Like if I would take one of my live streams and write it down and then publish it, though a bad one instead of a good one, it's not for me. I understand why some people are interested and attracted to the writings of Sioran, but to me it's just vague bullshit. And most of all childish. Like it's fine if you think that way when you're like 12 years old, but if you're about 20, you have to change something, man. Or girl. Or whatever you want to call yourself. Now we're switching from a porter to a stout. Because why not? And I've heard good things about The Stranger, but I keep forgetting about it. I have an old copy of The Plague. I haven't had the time to go past putting it in my bookshelf so far. And I've had it for a decade. Other things keep showing up, and I don't have any favorite country for anything. As for if I've ever had the chance to start a vegetable garden, yeah, but I unfortunately, because of work and other things in life, I haven't been able to properly tend to it. Like the first 2 years when I got my house, I made a herb garden and planted some different berry bushes and 3 fruit trees, and also different patches of various salads and some other root vegetables and so on. And that was fine for the first year, and then the second I started working more in other cities, and then I've kept having wild boars going through my whole backyard the past 3 years. So now it's just weeds. I mentioned it previously before, and I prefer to wait until I can talk to him in person in the future. That my friend Ravenlord is a fantastic person, and I think he's a true spirit of black metal and what it's all about. And I think he deserves to have his own episode or series on my channel rather than just being glossed over in a live stream. And if I still practice self-harm, not lately, because I need several parts of my body to not bleed when I work. But usually when I paint, I do it for the sake of painting. So it's a part of the art process, but it's always connected to something else. It's not just for the sake of it. As for if I have pets, I've had in the past. I don't have right now because I travel too much or work in different cities or work too many hours that they would be too sad and depressed and unfulfilled if I had them. So it's better that they have other humans to take care of them instead. And to me, it's more important to be content than happy. One doesn't have to exclude the other, but in that order. And my buck sounds good. Though it's about in season, though a bit late, but I understand why you have it. It's a nice style. As for if I believe in determinism or free will, I'm on the edge or fence of that. I don't really have a good answer about it, unfortunately. And I get some comments here about something that I can't see. Yeah, I answered that. If I have a favorite vegan recipe, not really, because I like variation and I always variate stuff because that's the best way to incorporate new or old ideas and ingredients into something new to keep having a different meal, even though sometimes it might seem or be the same. But there are a few good, like Italian and Asian style dishes that I make very well, and some soups, of course. I'll be sharing those on this channel in the future, but I really need to get like move, because my kitchen is too dark and bleak, and I can't get a good picture quality there. Unfortunately, I've tried to record something there, and to me it just looks like shit, and I just can't be content with sharing something like that. Wheat eggs can be nice too, though for me it's usually a bit too sweet. As for if it's possible to tell why I stopped insect, yeah, I'm going to share that in a future video about my experience with labels, because obviously running one and working with one over many years of my life had a big impact on my life as an artist and as an individual. So I'm going to share that as an individual. So I'm going to share that because the concept behind it is important, and maybe it will help someone to determine what to do with their bands or projects, or if they have friends with projects, and what they can do about it. And yeah, I agree. The boars are a menace in my area, and there are rules that inhibits people from hunting them. So people are hunting elk and deer, but they're not hunting boars. So the boars are used to running the place, and they eat not just all the gardens, but also a lot of mushrooms in the forest. They're used to ruining a lot of that land too. So that's just what happens when nature is nature, and I understand it, and I'm not angry about it because I respect nature. But yeah, that's just a part of life. And no, I don't like memes, and I haven't heard of Silverknife. I have no idea what that is. I'm very removed from most scenes or subcultures. Well, hopefully got a discount on that beer than if they had leftovers. If I like The Cure, yeah, I can like it in periods of times. Like, it's good background music for painting, I think. But also, as in terms of sound design, I think it's very fascinating. So unfortunately, that means that I have to avoid listening to it because I don't want to be too influenced by their design in what effects they use or production, because I don't want my band to sound like a copy of them. I've had sake before. It's fine. It's cool. Yeah, I know what you say about the boars. And I'm not sure why they have those rules. Like, because they apply those rules to the elk and the deer, but for some reason, weird reason, they don't apply it to other animals in the same area. and it's supposed to be wildlife like control, but they're not controlling it. They're just being selective and lazy. And yeah, in the past I've heard about the project Have a Nice Life, but it's been many years. And as many other things, if I don't know the people and if they don't approach me, I usually don't listen to it. That's just my approach to most things. I'm busy with what I do, and some people say that I'm a narcissist for that, and don't really give a shit about that. I don't know what durational art is, so if I've ever done it, I don't know. Maybe. And as for being interested in knowing what band or musician inspired me, it's a matter of perspective, I guess. But over the years, yeah, it's hard to tell. Because to me, nature is the best artist and inspiration. But old Forgotten Woods and old Bethlehem is very inspiring to me. Also, both old and new Manus. It's fantastic. Of an area after taking lots of walks in it. Not really, because I keep finding new things to look at. Like, I usually walk without a camera, just to focus on the immersion of the walk and going through nature. But then the moment that I bring a camera for taking photos or making videos, I see things from an entirely different perspective, and it's like being there, like in a different body, or it's like a different place. Especially as I go to many places every season too. So every season it's a new place, and with every different perspective that I am in during those times, it's different too. Unfortunately, there is plenty of places in this world to go to, so yeah, to me it's very hard to get bored. And if my misophonia makes it difficult to get inspired by other people's music, that's not related. To me, that's more my own rules or lifestyle. That to me, if it's not born out of a very intense atmosphere and mood that I've experienced, I can't trigger that into a composition. And also, of course, I never want to risk taking an idea from someone else. So that's why I usually avoid anything created by anyone else, because I want what I do to be its own thing. And what do I think about Urfost? I think they are fantastic people and genuine, true artists. I've known them for quite a while, and they were one of the first supporters of some of my projects, especially Life Lover. So I've had many fantastic memories and times with them, shared in different countries. And I really adore them. And it's been around 3 years since I met them last time. And I think about them frequently. And I look forward to seeing them again. And I know that they have a interesting, busy personal life, and I'm happy for them that they have what they have, because they deserve all the glory that is coming to them sooner or later. And I neither like or dislike Funeral Doom. It just is. I don't mind it, but I don't search it out. Like many other things. As for the reply about durational art, to me that still sounds pretty vague. I don't really understand what you mean about it. Because that sounds like everything that I do. To me, like my perspective of it. And as if I would be willing to talk about the times that I've dealt with heartbreak, or songs inspired by such periods of time. It's easier to talk about those songs sometime in the future. Because I get enough questions about love and related aspects of life. So I guess, yeah, I'll add that to my list of things that I need to do something about. And if I've ever experienced musical hallucinations when walking in the woods, well, that's pretty much my whole life and all my manifestations or recordings. I always hear music. And then there are things that amplify it, but I hear it sober too. I've done enough different uh, well, drugs is the wrong word, I think, but I've had enough experiences with different things in life to be able to reach that state of mind without adding something to it. And what would be some bands that you would want to do a split with? Well, I have some friends that we are working on things for the future. But because it would be like beyond stupid to talk about things that needs to be promoted on their own merits when they are finished. I can't talk about it like this, but there are things planned. On the other hand, when it comes to some artist that I would like to collaborate with or work with for the future, as for like a sound engineer or a mastering engineer for recording something, I think it would be fantastic if I could ever afford it, and if I was ever able to work with Robin Guthrie. I would really like that experience. And I think I will never be rich or famous enough to be able to work with goddesses like Björk or Kate Bush, but that's also high up on the list. But there are, artists that doesn't really work with anyone, so it's hard to say. Same with vocalists like Elizabeth Fraser and so on. As for hypothermia and what release I like more or is most close to my thoughts, there are a few, but unfortunately they're not released yet. So I'm going to talk more about that when that time comes. And what field do I want? I'm not making music or paintings or videos. I work in restaurants since about 20 years back. Though it's something I grew up with, because both my parents used to work in restaurants when I grew up, and my father has always been a chef. So since I could walk, I've been in restaurants. And since I was old enough to apply for a job and work somewhere, I've been working in restaurants because that's what I know. So that's where I am right now. I'm in one of the guest rooms on top of a restaurant. And about 80% of the time, I'm I do all of the different things that's necessary just to help the other chefs here. And about 20% it's putting different things together or cooking warm or cold things and putting plates together for service when it's the time of the day when people are coming here to get their meal for the day. And so on, just typical restaurant business stuff. And if I've ever heard music in my dreams and tried to play it in the physical world, well, usually I don't really have music in my dreams, and I barely have dreams. Usually it's just black. But I have a very good memory when it comes to melodies and chord progressions and what fits together. So that's always what I hear when I pick up on a sound or melody somewhere. But it sounds like a good way to try to learn guitar. So it sounds interesting, and I'm happy that you found a way that is yours, that works for you. As if I like Lars Norén. I'm not familiar with that name, I think. And if I've ever had to forget friends or cut them off my life, yeah, definitely. That's unfortunately a part of life sometimes. And hi, Christopher. Cheers. And as for what I do with my musical hallucinations, yeah, it's just one of the ways that my mind works. And fortunately, over the years, it's one of the things that has helped me and yeah, keeps me alive. It's one of the things that I live for or through. If I've ever gotten into fights with coworkers, not here, but in the past, yeah. And that's why I stopped working at the previous place, because they didn't like that I would question them, because I can't help it. And as I mentioned before in other streams and videos, I have always had problems and issues with authority. And I don't give a fuck who you are. And I will, of course, pay attention to and respect to if you're above or below me in terms of rank and skill at the workplace. But if you're wrong about something, and if you're doing something wrong or asking me to do something that's wrong, I'm going to call you out on it. Especially if I'm right and if I know a better version of something. And yeah, some people don't like that, obviously. But not physical. There's been people that I wanted to kick their ass, but as I figure, living their life in their weak, disgusting bodies is enough of a punishment. So they're already punished as far as I'm concerned. So that's why I don't go further with my impulses. I just shed it like water off my back. And I neither believe or disbelieve in anything called an afterlife. We can only do whatever it is that we're doing, past, present, future. We'll see where it leads us. And when it comes to Ritualmord and Återsyn, the second EP of the project, I'm going to make a video about that when I see you on again in a month or two. And once again, about Horns Emerging. The first album has been recorded for a long time. So there is 4 more songs in the same vein as the other 2 songs. And then there is 5 more songs on the second album that is similar, but a bit different, a bit more progressive. But yeah, time will tell what that takes me or us. And as for other reference that are made in this chat, I have no idea what you're talking about, and I'm honestly not really interested. But if you keep using terms that feel like a bad meme, yeah, I'm not interested. It sounds like from the titles, Norén's work seems pretty interesting. It sounds familiar, but I also tend to play with words and terms like that in my evenings or mornings. So once again, like just when it comes to avoiding music that could accidentally imprint itself on my other work, I have that kind of philosophy about everything. So if it's not clearly something that can influence me in writing to become a better writer, I have a hard time to not avoid it, especially if it's Swedish. Because if it's from another country, then it's about learning language and deepening my vocabulary. But for me, it feels like if I read too much of other Swedish authors, I may be influenced at a wrong capacity. But that's just me. So I'll see in the future, but yeah, I'm going to forget about it. And as I mentioned before, I don't really think about free will. It's a concept that doesn't really interest me. It just makes me tired. And I have no idea who or what Dasai is either. It's not even familiar to me. Good to know, I guess, though, yeah. I recognize the names, but still it doesn't really mean anything to me. But like with all things, like if it means something to you, that's fantastic. That's great. Doesn't have to mean anything else beyond that. It doesn't remove any value of your own experience. I just have a different worldview. And thank you for joining us, Maya. You're very welcome. Cheers. The past 2 beers have been over 7% here, so if I feel a bit unfocused, sorry. But I've also been up for almost a whole day so far, and for almost a whole stream, the browser keeps saying that the connection is bad while it's haven't stopped, so it's a bit confusing to me, and I'm sorry. Like now it says again that it's normal. It's confusing. As for what my favorite kind of beer is, that's hard to say, because I really love a good stout, but unfortunately there is a lot of mediocre stouts out there. So it's easier to have a bad one than a good one, unfortunately. Same with lagers and pilsners. And unfortunately, over the last decade, it's the same thing with various wild or sour or farmhouse ales. But if you go with the proper sources or brewers, you can never go wrong with a proper goose from Belgium. And make sure that it's not one of the few kinds that are sweetened. Because, yeah, that's obviously not a proper goose. Or at least, well, it could be a waste of a goose, but that's different. Then I tend to... I always had a weak spot for beers with berries in them rather than fruit. But that's also a problem the past years, that too many brewers are putting various random fruits and berries in their beers. And usually it's just for the sake of marketing and selling extra volumes rather than creating a quality product and drink. Again, it depends on my mood. Like, there used to be a period of time where I used to drink quadruples because it has a nice flavor and it fucks you up. But the problem is also that you can't really have more than 4 or 5 of them before you're unable or unable to speak properly. As for what sort of emotion I would want to convey to the listener with my music, well, I'm always on the search for a journey for emptiness and its best forms. Like, it's like an open mind, but better. Because nature doesn't judge. It exists on its own merits and values. And yeah, the beauty of nature and the night is always in my work, I think. As long as I'm not failing, that is. And thank you, Sean. As for if I plan on making more videos like that. So I appreciate that you enjoy them. And if I enjoy any horror movies, I used to when I was younger, but to me that's more of a social thing. Like it's to me it can be calming and relaxing to watch something stupid like that with friends while drinking beer or other things. Well, I can't really watch it by myself because I feel not scared but uncomfortable, because usually it's too stupid for me to be able to enjoy by myself without over analyzing it and just feeling annoyed at things that are happening that are beyond logic and what makes sense to me. And yeah, I think it's weird too. And it still says that the connection is unstable. And I know that it's been unstable for the whole week here. Yet somehow, like the whole morning, it's the same connection, haven't done anything to it, then it was fine the whole time. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that it's fine to most of you watching. That's what matters. And thank you, Maya. Cheers. What is for you with paranoia? That's a weird sentence. But yeah, to me, paranoia is just a state of mind. It's not, to me, it's never connected to reality. It's just an aspect of it, a part of it, like a reflection that keeps moving. So it's all about perspective. I have no idea what you're actually asking. You have to be more specific. As for what the brewing industry is like in Sweden, yeah, it's been growing like the past 2 decades here too. There are some good ones, but it's like 70% of them are shit. So they're giving a bad name to the good ones, unfortunately. But that's the case with many things in life. But yeah, there's good beer if you know where to look, obviously. And to S, hi. And how would I think it isn't too late to get into music from scratch if you're 28? To me, that's a bit vague, and I'm sorry if you think it's not, but because it's never too late. That's, yeah, like many other things, it's about perspective, and if you know what you're interested in, that can, like, there's so much to choose from, both to creating and experiencing. And if I've ever made my own moonshine, not from scratch, but I've purified from others. And of course, in my youth, I had plenty of experiences with it. As what I think about electronic music in general, I can say that I enjoy making it, but usually, as for experiencing it and hearing it from others, I often find it to be very uninspiring and lazy. As an example, the last rave I was at, I had to leave after 30 minutes because it was so uninspired and mediocre that I couldn't even finish the beer that I brought to drink at the place. And I'd rather invest my time into solitude than a mediocre after party too. And I know, especially if I know that I can do something better myself, that always infuriates me. Because if I pay for something, I expect you to be able to do it as well as me or better. And that can be applied to many things. But yeah, I can appreciate electronic music. I can't think of any at the moment because there's so much of it. So I'll need to think about that. But right now, my mind is in a bit different mood and mode because I'm drinking and trying to read comments and giving proper answers to as much as possible of it. As for any household Swedish beer brands, yeah, but we don't really have any bigger exporters, especially not overseas. As for what happened to the Black Hate split, well, we released like 200-300 copies of the tape, that sold out. And there was a label in Belgium from one of our friends who was supposed to release the vinyl, and then he just disappeared. So I'm sorry about that, but yeah, we made everything, like all files necessary to manufacture that vinyl is made, but it just never happened. And I'm not against making it in the future, but I will not make it myself because I can't afford it. And as for the return on paranoia, well, I think it depends on the person. Because with many substances, to me, like if I'm around people, it's something that I feel in general, and then it just amplifies it. But either way, I don't really care, because I'm fine either way, even if I'm having panic attacks and anxiety. I can still cope with it because I'm so used to it. So it's just another day in life if I'm experiencing that aspect of it. As for meanings of emptiness and what it could be understood as, well, yeah, maybe, but the thing is that I'm too uneducated in the philosophy and spirituality of Buddhism, so I can't really say that it is, but I also can't say that it isn't. Because, yeah, to me, emptiness is a kind of, to me, it's important and something that you should value. And you shouldn't try to escape it, and you shouldn't take it for granted. It's something that needs to be cherished. And thanks, and good night to you too. You are very welcome, and good night. And greetings to North Carolina again here. And as for the YouTube channel, it sounds interesting, but as I mentioned before, I can't really listen to other artists at the moment, especially when I'm working on myself on various projects. I just can't take the risk. Sorry. Hälsingland. When it comes to counties in this country, it's been so long since I studied that, so I'm not sure. Well, obviously I've traveled through it. But yeah, I don't know enough about it. And as for Norian, I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm not against it. Like, it's the kind of author, just like Camus. Like, if I had the finances, I would probably find a way to buy his works and then put them in a box, and then when I have the time in the future, I would go into it. But right now, my focus is with making music and video, and my next couple of albums that I'm working on. So all my focus is right now on making those things happen. And thank you, Matt, for that nice comment. I appreciate that a lot. And it's been a strange and beautiful album to me too, especially about a decade ago. It had a very special kind of place in my life. And yeah, I've traveled through it, but I never stayed there. Because I've spent more time like in Umeå, and then below that, of course, in Falun and those areas, and then upper like Östersund. So I'm there. And as for why I started making videos, well, like I mentioned earlier in this stream, it's a good way for me to talk to you and answer your questions, both in real time and also afterwards in other ways, and to share thoughts in depth and long form that I wouldn't be able to in like old school interviews in different magazines, which you would also usually not even be able to find because many of those magazines are only available in one country. And if I think boredom is the confirmation about life's lack of meaning, nah, not at all. Because everything is what you make of it. So if you're bored, that just doesn't, it's either permanent or temporary, but that doesn't really mean anything beyond that. It's all about you or your surroundings, and either can be changed. As for if I like to come to Mexico and if I took inspiration for Consider Suicide, yeah. And yeah. But right now, this world is a bit complicated. And welcome, Erdi. There's a lot of earth in your name. Sorry to hear about the war, but we appreciate having you here. Cheers. Yeah, getting drunk is never important, but the process, though, that's more important, I think. But yeah, let it have the time it needs. And that's nice to hear, Dunkelheit. And yes, I mentioned before, Thoughts on afterlife? Not really. I don't really have any thoughts. It is where it is, where it isn't. We will all find out one day. And no, I don't think it's stressful for me to talk or answer questions. After all, I put myself into this position. Though I think within an hour I will need to rest because I need to get up in like 6 hours from now. But as I mentioned before, as long as I have between 4 and 6 hours, I'm fine. And I had 4 hours last night, and I've been up since 4 this morning. So usually I need more beer to get a bit intoxicated, but I might be a bit silly to some people right now, but that's all a matter of perspective. And as for creative process, philosophy, or approach of music of my friend Jonas, like I mentioned this before, so it's worth repeating. In a not too distant future, which means this year, I'm going to record a long form, in-depth video where I'm talking about a lot of my experiences with Life Lover, which of course is directly connected to my friendship with Jonas. So I'm going to talk about that and a lot more in that video, but this is not the time or place. And Isabel, there's nothing wrong with silly. And yeah, as for nutmeg, me and Jonas ate like a large amount of powder each one night. And then I had to drag him around a part of a city for a couple of hours because he was walking very slow. But yeah, we ate the powdered form of the nuts. And I'm pretty sure that most of our hallucinations, which were mostly of the audio kind, were due to dehydration rather than anything else. I don't recommend it, though. There's plenty of other things that are a lot more useful and interesting. And if I plan to come to Italy in the future, yeah, if the world allows me. We'll see what happens with that. As we all know, this world is still evolving into many different directions. And every country has their own perspective, and we'll see what happens. I'm open to suggestions, but they need to be realistic. Because I'm not prepared to become homeless just to pursue a dream. I've done that 20 years ago already, and also 10 years ago. And fool me once, fool me twice, but if I do it a third or fourth time, I can expect a different result. I'm the only one to blame, and I'm not going to put myself into that situation before I'm completely sure that I'm doing the right thing. And some might not know or understand it yet, but I'm a patient bastard, and I let anything take the time that it requires. Time doesn't bother me. And that's nice to hear, Matt. Yeah, I recognize your name now that I'm seeing it again, that I see your whole name. That's good to hear. Thanks. Yeah, people say that, but many sayings are not immediately true. And in what way would you say that emptiness is something to be cherished? I think you, if you're not able to cherish it, you're going about things the wrong way, or you're not really experiencing emptiness. You're experiencing something else that you are connecting to it. Yeah, it's a bit complicated to explain. And I think I will be able to succeed when I make the more in-depth excursions into psychedelia. So I'll add going more in depth about that. And I don't understand jokes. Well, I can, but I'm limited. I read into things. And yeah, I agree. Being alone doesn't mean being lonely. Especially, there's a big difference that I explored and discussed in previous videos too. That it's a very big difference if you're alone by your own choice or if you're forced to being alone. That's a very different thing. And it can suck if you want to see people and no one wants to see you. That can turn into a very depressive situation. But if you're fine by yourself and can enjoy solitude and experiencing a form of emptiness through that, you should embrace that. And yeah, apathy is a completely different thing. And in all its forms, it's usually disgusting. And you should try to avoid it. And yeah, I mean, you can connect the dots. Yeah, neuroleptic and alcohol is a bad combination. I've tried some, and usually things will melt sooner or later. And as for if black metal ever will get the status of classical music and be taught in music schools, if I was a teacher, it would, because to me, black metal is classical music. I hear it the same way. My ears hear it the same way. But if we're going by just like the scholarly aspects of it or music theory, unfortunately, that is a limitation, I think. So I'm not sure. At least not to like a majority, but it could happen in some places. And if I have a favorite poet or segment of poetry, nah. And Matt, I think that sounds nice, and I appreciate hearing that. And though it sounds like a waste of a good record to put it in a box, like if you have a way to put it in a shelf or in a frame, that's more useful, I think. But it's your record, and you can do whatever you want with it as long as it makes you happy, or at least feel what you need it to make you feel. And of course, whenever I'm able to come to the UK, a beer is always fantastic. So we'll see what happens when I'm able to return. But yeah, if you use your full name to introduce yourself, I know who you are, because I'm good with names. But if you just say your first or surname, I won't know who you are. But if you mention the whole thing, I will know. And if I'm friends with the vocalist of Psychonaut 4, you mean David? Yeah. We've known each other for a long time. Wonderful band, wonderful guys, and he's a sweet, wonderful person too. And as for labels and thoughts on DSPM, I think I've said enough about that in my video about black metal. And yeah, I agree that the connection between classical music and black metal is very clear. As for if I have any phobias, I'm not sure. Not really, because I've been in plenty of uncomfortable situations and I've survived. It's time for another beer. So I'll return in just a little moment. As for favorite composers of classical music, I've never really learned any of the names of them. My grandfather used to have like an old, very big vinyl collection of different orchestras and composers. But yeah, I never really paid attention to much. My focus has always been with nature, not people. But as I mentioned earlier, when we recorded things with hypothermia and life flower in the past, we used to listen to Chopin. So that's at least one of the names. And for some weird reason, the carbonation of my first beer was very low. And then my most recent beer here overflowed and fucked up my pants. So this room is going to smell a bit alcoholic for a few days, but that's not my problem. And I finished the few craft beers I had, so we're back to a plain old Guinness. As for my concerns or lack of concerns, not really. Those subjects, I think I can't really contribute in any constructive or positive way, unfortunately. But I'm not concerned because it's a natural part. Like it has happened for every few hundreds years or thousands of years around our different continents. It's a natural part of life to travel. And unfortunately, some places are worse than others. And it's more of I'm more concerned with integration. Because that's very difficult. And Swedes are very bad at that. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I've had many good friends in my youth that did a good job. They became wonderful people in the end. So we'll see what happens with the next two generations that has been happening the past 2 decades that I have paid less attention to as I haven't been immersed into them. And as for thoughts on Zappa, I really liked what I've heard, but there's so damn much of it, so I don't have the time. But one of my friends is just beyond being a fantastic person and musician, has interesting and special taste in music. So I tend to enjoy that kind of music more when I'm with him than if I'm by myself, because then I'm just over analyzing everything. And that can be confusing after a while. And thank you, Eddie. That's good to hear too. I think like it's not that I've ever had the urge, but I've interacted with people and had friends over the years that struggle with that kind of urge or feeling to fit in or coping with not fitting in. And hey Joe, and that's fine. See, good to see you returning here. Hopefully see you next time. Good night. And yeah, once again, it's a good point to make. Like just seeing the word for peanut in a name is a bit distracting, but I see you're coming from a good place, so um, I think I more than anything struggle with the term normal because that has never really existed for me. And I don't believe there is any one correct way to view life or the world, the universe, etc. I think that's one of the main things that I've been thinking about or working through, because I keep running into contradictions and I despise feeling that I'm a part of that kind of movement. So I always try to learn and become a better person and to not be a part of that wave. But I think when it comes to spirituality and philosophy, it's very important. And it's not that it's the one correct way that I'm viewing things. I just think that what I'm experiencing and studying and also sharing is to some extent in many aspects, many forgotten and neglected traditions and paths that you can take in life that requires further exploration. And to me, it's important to share this journey with people because I think it has a value. And I think as for living or spending a childhood in a forest on a farm, sounds fantastic. And I see how that can determine your love for nature. And some of the things that really determined my love for nature is also like growing up in a smaller city and actually living in the last neighborhood of that city or outside of that city. I had more of a connection to nature and the countryside than the city that was connected to where I lived. And I often had the choice, which was often more than not connected to the ability to, rather than going to the city and to school and to people, to instead go out into nature and the forest and the countryside. Because I could already borrow the books from school to learn what I needed to learn. I don't need classmates or a teacher to tell me how to indoctrinate myself. I can instead take the books and with the tools that they gave me very early, in other words, how to read and how to write, I can take those tools and apply them to the information available to me and study it for myself through my own perspective and learn it truly instead of through a filter and a lens of a system that is obviously designed only to enslave people instead of liberate them. And that's why I also shows nature over the time. And I would only go to school the amount of percent that was required for me to not get kicked out. And over time, I ended up getting kicked out too. But in the long term, that's irrelevant. I'm here right now, and that's what matters. It's a good question indeed, and I appreciate it. And you're definitely welcome. Good night. Good night. Yeah, depending on if someone else has any specific questions. My mind is a bit blank at the moment. And I'm trying to finish this beer. And we're getting close to the 3-hour mark. So I think depending on what's happening the next 5 minutes or so, I will try to get some sleep before tomorrow's work at around 3 hours. And sounds good that some of you are deciding to have some rest too. It's usually a good thing. Life tends to get a bit silly without it. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. But it's not about wanting to be online or offline either, for that matter. Because I could do this for days as long as I have beer and drinks, but I would start getting self-conscious after a while if I keep doing things that I consider myself to be uninteresting. And as I mentioned before, I do have to work sooner or later. And to be able to work, I need to not be drunk. So if I keep drinking, I won't be a good worker. So usually I wouldn't mind staying on for another hour to drink more, but tomorrow is a very busy day as it's here in Sweden, it's Mother's Day. I don't know how it is in other countries. So we have a lot to do, and I'm starting an half hour earlier than usually. So 6:30 in the morning, I'm going back to work. So it depends on your question if you want to take it now or the next live stream or If you leave it in the comments, I will take it in the next Q&A video that I'm making too. As for if I had the time, get a higher education, what specialization would I choose? When it comes to things that would aid me in studying or writing about philosophy and spirituality, I would do that. But I think that as the world is right now compared to in the past, I think that system is irrelevant, really. It wouldn't really add enough for me to be worth the sacrifice of time and energy. I rather used all of that energy and channel that into actually writing rather than studying to later write, just to be approved by a community that I don't really relate to anyway. And thanks once again to those of you who are saying that you appreciate this. It's mutual. So thank you. And greetings back to Lithuania. You are very welcome. And good evening back to you, Brady. And Matt, if I'm still working in a restaurant, yeah, I'm in one right now. It might not look like it, but this is the upper floor of a restaurant. And in 6.5 hours, I'm starting my next shift, which will be very busy for about 10.5 hours. Then I have 2 days off where I will go home and paint and mow my lawn. If it doesn't rain, then I will return here for another week of madness. Then I'll see what happens beyond that. And once again, to Brady, if I've ever considered writing a book about thoughts and musical things and artistic things, yeah. It's in the future, but it needs to be in the proper context. I wouldn't want to do it just for the sake of doing it, but I have some ideas, and sooner or later it's going to happen. And to others, wishing me a good night. Thank you. And, I appreciate your words. As for if the restaurant here is vegan oriented or if I work with meat, we have options, but it's like a regular restaurant, so it's omnivore. It's all of the things, and for 80 to 90% of the time, I'm as in many restaurants, a part of the system. But yeah, there are several vegan options on the menu, but the main menu is unfortunately not vegan, and as I don't run this place, I can't control that, and I can only appreciate that the boss here and is a very caring person that actually cares about offering quality options to those that wants them. So like the previous restaurant I worked at didn't give a fuck about that. while I had to still be in charge of that whole aspect for hundreds of people, and that could be very infuriating sometimes when I put a lot of effort into something that was clearly appreciated by our guests, but the managers wasn't giving a fuck about. And they happily replaced me for someone else that just cost like €1 less an hour. Though they worked for one person while I worked for three. So are you really saving something then? Well, enough about that. So yeah, this is like a regular restaurant, but it's all about the options and what people you're working with and the surroundings and the atmosphere. I think that's very important. But I had to work with death in the past enough, so I'm used to it. And that's something that I'm going to talk about in another video too, which is connected to death. Because I think that's an important subject. And as for a question about etc. Yeah, I think it's very important because it's a tool to analyze and decipher different aspects of life and communication and language. Like it's a social skill or a lack of it. And it's a good way of bonding with different people to share a sense of humor or a lack of it. And I think that's good to hear. I'm usually not a fan of commenting either, and I never comment on others' work. Generally, I prefer to drink too. I think it's getting closer to resting for this evening. And if I take too much time between this beer and yeah, I don't have another beer today. And yeah, as I'm a bit tired, I wouldn't want to make anyone feel like I'm uninterested. Because yeah, as I mentioned before, I could do this for a couple of more hours if it wasn't for the fact that I need to work. But also, I care more. I would prefer to like make this every day for a bit less of time to keep a higher amount of quality connected to it. And I think most of you watching this would agree that if I would make like a 5-hour stream every week, it would become less special after a while. So it's better to do maybe 2, 3, or 4 hours every now and then. But it's all a matter of perspective, and I do enjoy doing this. I'll not just sharing some thoughts about questions that you ask me in this chat, but also, as you have heard over this stream, it also gives me questions, ideas, and suggestions for future videos that I can make to go more in depth. And as for donation alerts on streams, I have no idea what you mean or what you're talking about, because it's possible to make those kinds of stuff, uh, like donations or paid posts. But yeah, I'm not sure what you refer to as for alerts. And yeah, this is a new thing for me. I'm learning, and every time there's something new happening, either with the connection or the equipment, the camera, the microphone. There's always something new to learn, and hopefully in the next couple of ones, it's going to be more improvements than not. And yes, Braid is correct. There is a super chat connected to this video, and I'm not the kind of person that feels comfortable with reminding people about it frequently. There has been people using it, this one, and also the previous one, and I really appreciate it a lot. But I don't want to make it feel forced, because it's about, yeah, hanging out and talking and drinking and, yeah, doing this thing. Yeah. As I said, I'm learning and seeing what I can do better for the future and upcoming streams. And we'll see if it's 1 or 2 weeks away from the next one. Depends on my schedule and some other things. That's it for today or tonight. Thank you all for sharing your time and answering or asking interesting questions. It's been a nice time. I'll see you sooner or later. We'll see which comes first. Take care and good night. And you're very welcome. And thank you too. Good night. Take care. Have a good night. Or a morning or day, depending on where you are. And more is to come. See you next time. Take care.